So most little girls grow up being taken care of by their mother or their maternal figure. And some little girls grow up taking care of their mothers. And that is what we are talking about in today's episode of the Terri Cole Show. We're talking about parentified daughters. What does it mean, why it happens, and how it may still be running your life today if you were either an eldest daughter or the designated eldest daughter. You don't even have to be the eldest daughter. I wasn't, but I certainly was designated to be in that position. So that is what we are talking about today on the show. I'm so excited to jump into it. Before we get started, if you're new to my YouTube channel, welcome. I'm glad that you're here. Please make sure that you subscribe and hit the bell icon so you get notified every time I roll out something new, which is every Tuesday, my solo episodes, and every Thursday, my interviews. Here's the thing. Many women who are parentified have never even heard of this term. And I can tell you that from my therapy practice and the groups in my mastermind didn't even know that a term exists to describe their exact experience in life. They assumed their childhood was normal because it was the only one they knew, right? So for them to be parentified or to have more responsibility emotionally, there's a whole, I'm going to break down the different ways that you can be parentified. But this episode itself might be the first time that someone has actually named what they lived. So if that is you, welcome. We are going to dive into it. So what does it mean to be parentified? Parentification happens when a child takes on emotional or practical responsibilities in a family system that actually belong to the parent. So there are two forms. If we have emotional parentification, this is where the child becomes the parent's confidant, their friend, emotional support, their therapist, somehow taking on that responsibility to make the parent, make the mother feel better. But then you have instrumental parentification, and this is where the child actually manages household chores that is way beyond their years. It could be cooking for younger siblings, it could be cleaning, it could even be paying bills, right? Family logistics. I had a client who would be the person who decided when she was 8 years old, she was deciding where the family was going on vacation. And even though that might sound like, oh, she was so indulged or that was so, no, it becomes a responsibility and something that an 8-year-old does not have the cognitive capacity to actually do. But it's amazing what we can do when we are put in the position to do it. And it isn't an either or thing. Many parentified daughters experienced parentification in both areas. So they were emotionally parentified and instrumentally parentified. And here's the thing. This is not the same as being like a helpful or good kid, right? It's not like that. The weight of being parentified is a very different experience. And again, we have to take into consideration from a psychological point of view that you're being asked to do things that you don't really have the capacity, or like you're not grown enough psychologically, emotionally to do them. And yet when you're put in a position to have to do them, you do them. So I just want to make that distinction about it's not the same as being helpful. Because, I also have had clients who, she and their siblings cleaned the house every Saturday and that was their job to do. But if the mother was still mothering and still doing parent stuff, that might have just been a cultural thing, right? That might have just been you do chores. That's not the same as being parentified. So why does it happen? Well, often the parents, like if you have a mother where you were parentified by her, you were taking care of her own mental health struggles and unmet needs, right? Could be addiction, could be unprocessed grief, emotional immaturity can sometimes bring this on. And why do kids step in? Well, part of it is that no matter how our parents, whatever our maternal or paternal impactors, as I call them sometimes, what they did or didn't do, children love their parents. And when you see a need, especially when you're raised to be parentified, you have your antennas are so high. You see the need. you jump in and fill the need. Part of why we step in is that we want the home to be safe. We want things to run the way they're supposed to run, even if that means that we do it to make sure that it happens, right? And again, it's not like as a kid, anyone sits down and makes like a strategic decision to do this. Of course, this develops over time where there's a need until it's simply how the family operates. So with my therapy clients that I've talked to about this, it's like there's no moment where they can go, oh, this is when I took on more than I was able to handle at my age. It's almost as long as they can remember, they've been doing it. And then for some, if the parents got divorced, so for the ones where it is circumstantial, because sometimes people become parentified in that way. Parents get divorced. I had a client where the parents got divorced. She was 9. She had 3 younger siblings. And when the parents got divorced, her mother fell into a deep, deep depression and could not function. Now, this was, a long time ago when therapy was not readily available. This was like decades ago. And even now, it can still happen now, but her mother used to get up with them to go to school and make breakfast, but when she got depressed and couldn't get up, my client, who was the eldest daughter, started doing all of those things, and that was from 9 on. So from 9 until 18 when she moved out, she was taken care of, and she didn't even move out at 18. She waited until her youngest sibling was older, but that's a circumstantial situation. Eventually her mother did get back into higher functioning, but she never got back to her pre-divorce functioning. So some people, it's just happens. It can be a health crisis that also puts a daughter into the position of having to be parentified. But it's not normal, right? It's not a normal, healthy experience for a child in childhood, right? Because what happens is if you are very high functioning, if you are helping, if you are doing all the things, there's a lot of socially sanctioned positive feedback that you may get, right? So you may hear, oh, like you're so mature for your age, or you're so responsible, or you're so easy. And again, as kids, we are dialed into our environment because that is survival. We need to know what is going on. So we know if we need to be easy because the parents do not have the capacity to take care of us the way they need to. And then when you get that praise, it also reinforces the role. So now we have this loop, right? So it makes it even harder to question whether you should have been doing those things at 15 or 10 or 5 or whatever the things you were doing. I think that being reliable, capable, all the things, that was for survival. So as much as it almost feels like it's a character trait, like we grow to become that, but again, it was out of a need that was in the family system. Another thing, and I see this in my high-functioning codependent clients, many of them with mother wounds, is that when you managed everyone else's feelings, you don't have time for your own, right? It's very difficult when you are managing, especially younger siblings or your mother's feelings. The likelihood that you're sitting around thinking about your own feelings is very small because there's no time. You're just on to the next and what it is that you need to do. So let's talk a little bit about how this could be impacting your life today. Because of course, this is what we care about. Like if that was just your experience, it would be like, okay, that was the experience. But how it shows up and how people come into my therapy office is there's so many, there's a whole array of symptoms and behaviors. So one is difficulty receiving help or care from others without feeling really guilty or uncomfortable about it. Like there's a hyper-independence that comes from being parentified that you really like, hey, the person I can count on is me, and that's what I'm going to do. Another thing is feeling responsible for the emotional states of the people around you. So we get into very codependent relationships often, where we take on all sort of the emotional burden for that relationship, for that person being happy. If they're unhappy, we feel like it has to do with us and that we need to change that. Often you're saying yes to things when you'd rather say no, because asserting yourself is scary. A lot of times it's because as a kid, you don't have a choice when you're a child. So then you get into adulthood and that automatic assumption that you don't have a choice, that if someone wants something from you or is asking you to do something, that really we just feel like if they ask, we have to do it. That's not true. But this is part of why healing this experience and why understanding if you were parentified is important, because you do have a choice, but you only have a choice if you know you do and if you're willing to take it, right? Another symptom of being parentified could be chronic guilt when you prioritize yourself. If you even try to prioritize yourself, you may feel guilty. You also may be in relationships where you overfunction, where you overgive, and the other person underfunctions and undergives. And again, why is that? Well, because you are very used to being in this position of taking care of things, of handling things, of feeling over responsible for other people's experiences. Another symptom is being confused about what you want in life, like not really knowing it, because being so outwardly focused, right? When we're so focused on other people and making sure everyone else is okay, thinking about ourselves and what we want, self-reflecting, all of those things, that time is a luxury. And if you grew up in a home where you were burdened by these responsibilities that were way, way older than you were, right? Your young shoulders taking all of this weight. You're not thinking about, what do I really want, right? How do I really feel? Who am I? That is a luxury that many parentified daughters in particular just don't have or didn't have. They could have it now, but they don't know it. Feeling most comfortable when you're needed can be another symptom. And another thing that can happen is when things are going well, right? When you've been a chronic problem solver in childhood because you're parentified, there can be anxiety in you when things are calm or things are going well. Have you ever had that sense of like the other shoe is definitely going to drop? I find that parentified daughters with that unhealed mother wound can't stop thinking that the other shoe is going to drop. And I'm like, what if it doesn't though? And it's almost like the anxiety created by the thought that the good times can last or feeling good can last. It's almost like they create something to be anxious about because it's so foreign. And here's the thing. Again, this is mother wound season. So we're talking quite a bit about mother wound in there's like 4 episodes that I'm talking about it. I always mention this because this is not to like sit around and blame, right? So we're not blaming your mother, even if she is to blame, right? So I'm not letting her off the hook either, but it doesn't help, right? Naming the truth of your experience. Now that certainly helps. Knowing that it's your responsibility now. But for many of my therapy clients, they love their moms, even though they failed them terribly. So just know that you can love her and still acknowledge what happened was too much for a child to carry, right? There doesn't have to be malintent on your mother's part. And naming what you actually experienced is really not an attack. This is the beginning of understanding why you are the way you are. And if you want to change the way you are, if you don't like some of the relationships that you're in or the patterns that you're in or the amount that you're giving and doing in your relationships, you have to give yourself permission to dive into a deeper understanding of why you are the way you are. Because I promise you, you are the way you are for a million good reasons. I want you to give yourself permission to grieve the childhood that you deserved, but maybe didn't get, because you did deserve it. And most of us didn't get it. Like, that's just the truth. Recognizing, right, the pattern is the first step to changing the pattern, because we just bring these, what were adaptive patterns, right? This was adaptive in childhood. It probably got you lots of praise. It perhaps kept you away from harm. But these same exact things, this overfunctioning, overgiving, overdoing, feeling overly responsible for everything that got you positive feedback in childhood, creates this negative loop in adulthood and in your relationships. Because where does it lead is really the question, and it leads to resentment. It leads to feeling underappreciated. Because when we overgive, we can almost only ever be underappreciated, right? Because we are coming from a dysfunctional or a disordered motive of why we're doing it. It's like we're back in our childhood home. It's like we're afraid of what will happen if we don't. So again, we have to look at our own motives, why I am the way I am. Give yourself permission to grieve, and also have compassion for the little kid that you were, because recognizing this pattern is the first step towards changing, right? We can't change anything we're not aware of, or that we don't know, or that we're in denial of. So many women find that naming this for the first time is a relief. So if that's you, and if you were parentified, name it, claim it. That's what happened in your life. And this doesn't have to be about anyone else but you, because you're the person that I care about, right? You becoming empowered in your life and in your relationships. That is what I care about. So listen, if you recognize yourself in this episode, I am launching my Mother Wound course, and that is the next step for you. Let me walk you through. It's a virtual live experience. It's absolutely an amazing, safe container to understand and transform your mother wound. Just go to terricole.com/mother wound. The link is in the description box. You can find it. And you guys, there's nothing wrong with you, right? All the stuff I talk about in this podcast and on my channel, this is anything that will empower you to create a life and relationships that absolutely thrill and fulfill you. That is my desire. That is my commitment, because I honestly, in my heart of hearts, know that it is what you deserve, and it is 100% possible. But we have to make some changes. We have to be willing to go in before we go out. And that's exactly what we do in the Mother Wound course. We go in and we have to go back in time. And it's not that we're going back in time to linger forever, because of course we're not. But we have to go back on a data collecting journey of what you experienced. Before you can heal it, we have to acknowledge it. So if that is interesting to you, I would love to see you on the inside of the Mother Wound course, which is starting soon. Go to terricole.com/mother wound. If this episode is helpful to you, if there's anyone in your life who you think could use this information that was in today's episode, please share this episode with them. I hope you guys have the most amazing week. And as always, take care of you.